The Kharkiv region is the eastern part of the country where the front line still runs. Most people have heard of Kharkiv, of course. Some might recognize names like Kupiansk or Liptsi, but there are many different places that rarely make it to the headlines, and each has its own story and character. So today I would like to give you a little bit broader look of the region. I'll be visiting a couple of villages and different neighborhoods of Kharkiv itself, so we can get a better sense of how both Kharkiv and the surrounding region are living through these times. I got some flowers for my very good friend Inna, whom I'm about to meet now. We worked together for 7 years at Ukrainian Railways, and she still works there. That's why I'm waiting for her here at the railway station as she's returning from work now. So we're going to catch a regional train and head to the city of Dergachi, where she lives. It's about 7 miles north from Kharkiv, and it's a very lovely small town with not so lovely modern history. We took a regional train from Kharkiv heading north toward Kazachий Lopan, once a busy railway border crossing into Russia. Since the war began, all traffic through that station has come to a stop. These days most passengers get on or off in towns like Dergachi and Slatino. Kazachий Lopan and Slatino were among the first to fall under occupation in the early months of the war. They were later liberated during Ukraine's counteroffensive. Dergachi, where we're heading, remained under Ukrainian control. Generally, the farther you're from the border, the better things tend to be, though airstrikes remain a threat across the region. Today, this direction, northwest of Kharkiv, is no longer part of the active front line. So, after about 25 minutes, we got off in Dergachi. Dogs are barking. We arrived at Inna's house. So welcome to Dergachi. Охраняет. Security guard.
Ну, ты хороший.
So we have to go upstairs на второй этаж. Wow. It's nice to live in a private house. Ina wants to show her windows. Damaged windows. Ну, а их не выбило? Или вы поменяли уже?
Нет, нас не выбило, нет. Просто прострелила.
А, это была дырка?
Осколки, это дырка. Это я все позадувала пеной.
А это от ракеты?
Да. Осколки летели. И
So,
повредила нам окна. Это я все позаклеила.
that was a hole from a fragment from a rocket.
И вот же.
And here is another hole.
Генератор.
Wow,
Да.
it's a real generator because they have electricity outages. А как часто отключают электричество?
Ну, сейчас уже не так часто, а в начале войны очень было часто, поэтому без него никак было. Надо было покупать.
Yeah, so people had to buy generators because without electricity you don't have water. You can't basically live here without electricity when you're in a private house. Oops. We actually traveled a lot with Inna. We've been to Odessa. She collects magnets. We've been to Odessa. We've been to Lviv. We've been to Crimea 2 times at least. Crimea was our favorite destination, but when they occupied Crimea, we started traveling to Turkey. So she collects magnets. It's so good to know that some of my friends are still here in Ukraine and that we can still meet in person. After taking a bit of time to unwind at home, we headed out and Inna showed me around. Dergachi is a small town. About 20,000 people lived here before the war, and it's a place of contrasts. You see damaged buildings right next to ones that look completely normal. But when locals show you around, the focus often shifts to the destruction. It's what stands out and it's what's on people's minds. We ended up catching a cab, since the town is a bit too spread out to cover everything on foot. Inna and the cabbie started chatting, and I was surprised by how casually they talked about things that really aren't casual, like the regular drone attacks Dergachi faces. The cabbie didn't mind my camera and was actually happy to share stories about some recent stuff that had happened around town.
А це дом культури і розбитий. Там розбитий крепко. Бачите, що?
Я вижу. Ой, да, сильно разбитый.
Да.
And eventually we pulled into the central part of town near a spot that usually comes up when locals talk about what happened here in 2022. There is often a place in a city, even when it's a small city like Dergachi, where concerts take place, where kids go to extracurricular activities, and we call it Dom Kultury, the House of Culture. And this is how the House of Culture looks like in Dergachi. So it was completely destroyed in an attack, and it's just ruins. This sign says Dergachi, the shield protecting Kharkiv. And that's true because Dergachi is located 7 miles north of Kharkiv, and if Russian army advances, they will reach Dergachi first and only then Kharkiv. Inna is actually a trained nurse. That was her first job before she started working with Ukrainian railways. Сколько лет ты работала медсестрой?
7 лет.
So she worked as a nurse for 7 years. And women with a medical background have to go to their local enlistment office and register so they can be potentially mobilized. But because she works now with the railways and her specific job is considered strategic, she got an exemption. So your job can really take you off from the front lines. On the brighter side, I'd say Dergachi still feels normal in a lot of ways. The town center looks fine, clean streets, many buildings in decent shape, shops open, more locals than soldiers around. It's very sad that a day without drone strikes feels like a win for people here, but for a town just 6 miles from the Russian border, things could be way worse. The local hospital is up and running, a few ambulances were parked out front and medics hanging around ready if needed. You can even walk through the fields. We actually did. There are no warning signs about mines here. This part of Ukraine is a vast steppe, historically called Slobozhanщина, the land of free settlements. Out here you really get a sense of how wide and open the land is. I absolutely love the countryside. Actually, I get pretty tired of the big city. It was time to say goodbye to Inna and Dergachi and head back to Kharkiv while the buses were still running. One more good sign of normalcy here is the transportation. Many people actually commute to Kharkiv for work, and you can still catch a bus or regional train, and they mostly run on schedule. I won't comment on the comfort, you can judge that for yourself. Apparently, since I was returning from a relatively quiet area, not part of the active front line, my bus passed through one of the military checkpoints without being stopped for document checks. For a while, I could see anti-tank barriers, the kind we call Czech hedgehogs, and then, just like that, I was back in Kharkiv. I made it back safely, and tomorrow I'm heading to another part of the Kharkiv region, this time closer to the active front. Let's hope things don't get worse around Dergachi, and I'll see you tomorrow. Today, guys, I want us to travel to the village of Tsirkuni, a place in the Kharkiv region which I know quite well. It used to be a very popular spot for people to have dacha, to go swimming, enjoy nature, and it's located just beyond the Kharkiv ring road. So the distance is pretty short. The village was under Russian occupation for 2 months, but then it was liberated. So let's try to find a bus to Tsirkuni. Tsirkuni has been on my mind constantly since the war started. It's very close to Kharkiv, yet it suffered far worse. Kharkiv was shelled from there and the village itself was occupied. It faced the full brunt of the war. I'm not gonna lie, I was hesitant to go there, but since I knew the place very well before the war, I decided to make a super quick trip in and out. And from the very first minutes after crossing into Tsirkuni, I realized it might have been a mistake. Well, before we walk just quickly around downtown of this village, I would like to give you a bit of background. As I'm from Kharkiv, I naturally know some of the recent history of this place. When everything just began in February 2022, the Russians advanced from the north and they very quickly reached the outskirts of Kharkiv. And this village was occupied right from the start. They tried to break into Kharkiv from here, but after several failed attempts, they dug in within the residential areas here and started shelling us. And when Ukraine launched a counter-offense, they pushed the Russians back from Tsirkuni pretty easily. And on May the 7th, this village was liberated and life in Kharkiv has improved significantly as well. Tsirkuni is a heavily underpopulated village. Around 80% of the residents left during the early stages of the war and never returned, which is completely understandable. Active combat zones remain 12 miles north of the village. I believe it's mostly pensioners who still live here, unable to leave or change their circumstances. This place feels nearly abandoned. I guess this used to be a shop, and I've seen this place many times online, and whenever people come to Tsirkuni to show the war, they usually show this shop because you see how it looks. I was only walking through a small part of the village, trying not to lose sight of my bus stop, because I didn't want to risk getting lost or stuck here. Many fences still have the word "Люди" written on them, which means people in both Russian and Ukrainian. Apparently, during the occupation, residents hid inside their homes and painted those words to signal that unarmed civilians were inside. It was difficult to take it all in, especially seeing fences riddled with bullet holes. I can see a shelter, so let's take a look. It's brand new, I can see it. So they built a shelter. Oh my gosh, I can see some desks, so probably it was built for kids. And here is the board, maybe so kids can have some lessons here. So I can see my bus. Now it will make a turn and I'll catch it and go to Kharkiv. Guys, really want to get out of here. Phew, guys, we made it safely back to Kharkiv. I feel so much better here. That village, very gloomy atmosphere, and that was the very last bus from Tsirkuni to Kharkiv. If we had missed it, that would have been a complete disaster. So I am so happy to be back in Kharkiv. In a war like this, every mile, every kilometer really make the difference. We are now in the neighborhood of northern Saltovka, and it was hit the hardest. This is unlucky place in Kharkiv because it was close enough to the Kharkiv ring road to be shelled directly. As I mentioned previously, in 2022, the Russians were just beyond the Kharkiv ring road, so this neighborhood was just close enough to get destroyed. But if we go to downtown, the picture will be very different. This is the nature of this war. You can go from destruction to normal life within half an hour. And when I show places like this, people comment things like, wow, Kharkiv was heavily bombed. When I show downtown, I get the opposite reaction. But the truth is something in the middle. It isn't spread evenly throughout the city. And to give you some perspective, I want to take you to downtown. This is going to be the most positive part of this video because downtown Kharkiv is lovely, beautiful, well-maintained, and there is no widespread destruction there. And actually here we can see that they demolished an apartment block that was severely damaged, and just it was no sense to renovate it. But these two apartment blocks are renovated because they looked very different. This is not the typical color of our block of flats. So they renovate some buildings, and those which were damaged just too severely, they just demolish. So they try to maybe renovate this neighborhood a little bit. Well guys, we made it to downtown Kharkiv. I am now in my favorite Shevchenko Park, and it is the same day, the same city, but such a different vibe. People are out and about, everything is working, fountains are running, and here you can really appreciate the luxury of being a little bit further from the outskirts. So let's go and find some cozy cafe, grab a cup of tea and unwind a little bit. Well guys, with a cup of tea from Kulinichi and with this lovely view to the Kharkiv main square, let's wrap up this journey and this pretty emotional day. Let's hope for the best for the people who still live in dangerous areas. Let's wish them safety and peaceful sky as soon as possible. And I have to say bye for now, as I need to get back home. So thank you very much guys for watching this video, and I hope to see you very soon in my next ones. Cheers!